Today on Conversations with Deuce and Mo, we have the iconic, the legendary Gary Gerould.
The G-Man.
The G-Man.
Appreciate you being here, G.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm honored to be your new surroundings, and I guess it's maybe not that new, but gosh, it looks really nice.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you. We
Well,
did
looks
not
better
do
with
it.
you in it too.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
you're one of
right.
our favorites.
Everybody's on your favorites list. Come on.
Oh no,
There's a lot
no.
of favorites, but you're like, I mean, you think about. Well, you meant a lot to my career. We know that, and
To
more.
both of our
Yes,
careers.
like, and you're just such the kind person. I wasn't going to start with all this, but
Well, you might as well.
no, you know how we feel about you. You've from me being really young in this business have been so influential and with feedback early in my career. I remember one of the things he told me a long time
Ooh,
ago
what?
when I used to do sports updates on a local sports station in town.
Yeah.
He told me, hey, you just got to slow down a little bit. And that always stuck with me. But also
Just a
just
small
seeing
piece of
how you
advice.
go about your business, your professionalism, your preparation, and you've been doing it at a high level forever. It's really impressive. I mean, we're always impressed by like LeBron playing all these
Yeah.
years, DeMar DeRozan.
No.
You've been doing this since 1985 just with the Kings.
You mean I've got something in common with LeBron?
You do.
Yeah, greatness. Okay,
A
you got greatness.
sustained greatness. So yeah,
You're very kind. You're
It's
very
a pleasure to have you here.
kind. Well, it's a treat, as I say, and it's just sometimes as you get older, you get a little more reflective, and you look back on things, and you get a little more philosophical about things, and so it's interesting that it has lasted as long as it has.
Yeah.
Since the Kings came in 1985, and so we've been there and we've seen an awful lot of things, and hopefully we'll see a lot more, and hopefully we'll see a lot more in a upswing, in a positive vein.
I want to start all the way at the beginning, like 1985 for you. I guess you get into broadcasting, you're here in Sacramento. Was broadcasting always top of mind for you though, since you were little? Like, how did that come about?
It's kind of a convoluted story. Only child. My father was ill from the time I was 5 years old until he passed away. I was 12. He had a cancer. He was a research scientist for Dow Chemical Company. I lived in Midland, Michigan. And as an only child, and with my mom also experiencing a lot of different illnesses, I was kind of forced to fend on my own a lot.
Yeah.
And I lived at different times with neighbors and with members of our church congregation, our pastor's family, etc. So I learned at a very young age kind of how to get along on my own.
Whoa.
And there was a time that, the radio station in my hometown, small town radio, about a mile from my house. And shortly after my father passed, I started going there on a daily basis. And I would just hang out, and I would just watch guys, DJs and the news guys, and, what they did and how they did it, and became familiar with the music library and one thing or another. And as long as I can remember, looking back to my early years, I always wanted to be a broadcaster, and specifically a sports broadcaster. So to see that come to fruition, and to now have all of this time later to be able to look back and say, wow, you've been blessed with some tremendous opportunities. And I have. And I hope that I never lose sight of that. I hope I never lose an appreciation and respect for that. And who knows how long the ride can last. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm old enough now that, you have to worry. Inevitably, something will happen.
Yeah.
It happens to all of us at some point. And now you just wonder, okay, when it will be and how you'll react to it, and hope that it's not in the middle of a ball game.
Oh my God.
Gee, man.
Please. And you know what happens? If it does happen in the middle of a ball game, people are going to look back at this clip and go, he knew it. He said it.
He died doing something he loved. Oh, gee, man.
So yeah, just hanging out at the radio station, soaking that in. You obviously fell in love with it.
I did, yeah.
When did you realize, oh, this is going to, like, I'm going somewhere with this? It's one thing to want it, but like that it was actually going in the direction you wanted.
The fact, well, as a teenager, I was able to get a weekly show on the radio station that related primarily to school activities and things like that. And that seemed to be well received, and it went well. And I just thought, okay, this is kind of in my mind, a natural progression.
Yeah.
And then you go to college, and I go to a small school in Indiana that's basically a church-related college at that time, now a university, but small student body. You got 1,200 people on campus. And wanting to get it further into broadcasting, but not having the luxury of a broadcast curriculum. And you got to remember, at this time, and we're talking about the late 50s, early 60s. This is a long time ago. Colleges and universities, now everybody has broadcasting. They have their own stations. They have the curriculum. They have instruction. They have everything. At that time, there were only a handful of universities in the entire nation that had any kind of background for broadcasting. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'll spend a couple of years in the small environment, and then I'll go to one of the universities, maybe Northwestern, maybe Michigan State. They were two in that part of the country that did have broadcasting curriculum, and, you know, learn more about the broadcast life and prepare myself for that. Well, it's funny how things change, but I found that I liked the small campus environment. Ooh. I liked the fact that, you know, you went to classes and there were only 25 students, and you knew your professors, and you knew the president, and you knew people in the administrative staff. And that was welcomed to me, and I enjoyed that. And fortunately, I had no money to pay for an education. I had an uncle who was in agriculture who lived in Pennsylvania, and he stepped up and said, I will provide the funding for you to get your college education, wow, and you pay me back as you can at no interest.
Wow.
So for 20 plus years after I graduated from school and I started to get a foothold in broadcasting, I would send my uncle a check every month or so, you know, paying off this debt. But it was a good environment. It wasn't that I learned so much about the broadcast industry in that small campus, but the fact that during the summers I'd go home to my home in Michigan, and the radio station always welcomed me, and I worked full time during the summers. And so that's how I got a pretty good knowledge of small town radio.
Wow. Okay, so like you said, it wasn't necessarily the schooling, it was more the experience then,
yes,
of just being hands-on at the radio station. So then I guess before we get to how you got to Sacramento, how did you start calling games and understanding like the cadences of play-by-play and everything else?
That's, to me, is one of the fascinating stories, and there are many along the way. And everybody has their tales. I'm back in my hometown after I'd graduated from Anderson University. I'm working at the radio station. It was in the fall, and it's a Friday night. Football's a big thing in the state of Michigan. When I was a student at Midland, we had a state championship football team, so it was a big deal. So I'd go to the game on Friday night and just hang out in the broadcast booth, and the sports director's calling the game. Well, the first Friday night that I was there, and it was early in the football season, I can't remember if it was the first game or not, but at halftime, he went out, presumably for a smoke or whatever. He didn't come back. He did not come back.
What?
And the program director for the station also was the engineer for the sports broadcasts. And he turned to me and he said, well, it looks like you're going to be doing the second half of this game. No preparation, a single memo sheet that had names and numbers.
What?
And so that's how it really began to blossom. And I called the rest of that season, Friday nights for football, and then the basketball season before we moved to California.
Wait, so that one opportunity being thrown into the fire led to it being just like, all right, this is your play-by-play path.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
isn't
That is so cool.
it's bizarre. And to this day, I still don't know whatever happened. The fellow's name was Art Sovey. He was the sports director of the radio station. I don't know what in the world or why in the world he never came back. I know that he lost his job as a consequence, and I ended up doing the games the rest of the season.
It's just wild.
Crazy,
It's an insane
huh?
story. What a way to get your start.
Yeah.
Were you
yeah.
nervous at that time? Do you remember?
I don't think I had a chance to be nervous.
Oh.
It was just like, okay, we got to do this.
He was like, I was born for this. Like you were just, did you, in that moment though, did you ever think of like, oh, this is so cool that I get to do this? Or do you not even remember?
I don't remember that. I remember looking back on it now, just thinking what a bizarre story it is,
Yeah.
and the circumstances that would open that door and lead to, what's something that I'd always wanted to do from as young as I could remember.
So then the door was opened.
Yeah, and I just think about your journey to Sacramento now.
Yes.
You get hired by KCRA, still a station to this day,
Yeah.
but back then it was just a radio station when you got hired. Is that correct?
Well, I started in Chico,
Okay.
at KHSL Radio in Chico. And that's another crazy story because my father-in-law, who was a minister and a pastor at a church in Chico, he would go in on a monthly basis or whatever and record a lead in and lead out to religious programming that the station had to have on Sundays in order to fulfill the requirements of their FCC license from the Federal Communication Commission. So my father-in-law, who was a large, very stoic man, was in there one day doing that, and the program director, his name was Don Baroda, and I'll forever be indebted to him. And he was crazy. He came flying out of his office, and he saw my father-in-law. He said, "Preacher, I just had to fire so-and-so. What am I going to do?" And my father-in-law rather stoically says, "Well, I have a son-in-law who's involved in broadcasting in Michigan. Preacher, get him on the phone right now." And 2 weeks later, Marlene and our infant daughter, Beth, were driving across the country to Chico, California.
It's like a movie.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
old
another
school
crazy
movie.
story.
That is like it just that is what led to this iconic career of yours here in Sacramento was that first call to Chico. And so then what was it exactly before KCRA? What was it that you were doing in Chico at that radio station?
Did a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Primarily news.
Yeah.
Did a stint for a while as a disc jockey doing music. I mean, people today don't even know what a disc jockey is.
Yeah.
But, was involved in music and news. And I really appreciate the fact that you spend a lot of time working on hard news.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you'd go make the police beat. You'd go to the sheriff's department. You'd go to the highway patrol every day in the morning. Find out what had happened, in the previous 12 hours overnight. You went to every city council meeting. You went to every board of supervisors meeting. You went to every school board meeting. And as much as I hated school boards and politics of city government, knowing that, it has to exist and it serves a tremendous purpose, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But I learned how to write, and I learned how to, address these things and break things down and analyze and then put it into words and convey it on newscasts on the radio station. So it was invaluable from that standpoint. And then during that time, KHSL was only a radio operation, and they had a TV operation as well, but they didn't have any local news. And a decision was made among the people in the front office that they wanted to develop a local news programming. And they came to me and said, "Would you be interested in doing sports?" Well, I have no knowledge of television. I have no background in television whatsoever. But you talk about a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I sat for 5 minutes, 5 nights a week in front of a studio camera and basically delivered a radio sports broadcast, but to a television audience. And so that's how I started to learn a little bit about TV. Then you fast forward a few months, and I get a call out of the blue from a fellow by the name of Bill Zimlick, who was at one point came from Chico. I later found out that Chico was like a feeder system. It was like the AAA ball club that was sending guys to the big leagues in Sacramento, to KCRA. KCRA had a news department of over 50 people. Wow. Which was bigger than any of the markets in San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, Oakland, whatever. And it was a real honor to be able to work there. Well, I get this call from Bill Zimlick, and he said, "You don't know me. My name is Bill Zimlick, et cetera. I work in Sacramento in broadcasting. I think you would be tailor-made. They have an opportunity in the sports department at Channel 3, and you need to check it out." And he gave me a contact name of the news director. And so a couple of weeks later, Marlene and Beth and I drive from Chico down to Sacramento. I spend a day with the Kelly brothers in KCRA and learn a little bit about what's going on and one thing or another, and some of their philosophy, and then it's time to do an audition, and Bob Kelly takes me down to the studio, and so I do a 3.5 minute or whatever broadcast. He just a tape, and we walk out of. He says, "Well, that went well. You've been doing a lot of these." And I said, "Well, no, that's the first time I've ever."
You didn't lie? I would have totally lied.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing this forever.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think I got here, G-Man? Come on.
So at any rate, it was whatever they saw, they deemed was good enough, and I was offered a job, and so we moved to Sacramento. That was in 1965.
Wow. So think about this. This is the perspective. 1965. That was 20 years before the Kings moved to Sacramento.
Correct.
It's hard to even imagine a life in Sacramento without the Kings.
Correct.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So
and he lived that life.
Yes.
And then plus.
And all the years of Sacramento Kings basketball. So you obviously spend a huge chunk of your life, raise your family here. Like, that's pretty substantial. Not to fast forward, but there's rumblings that the Kings might be moving to Sacramento. How did it come about that you had a chance to be the voice of the Kings?
Another great story.
I love this.
Out of the blue, a phone call came. I think it was January of 1985. The late Gregory Dutch Van Dusen was involved with the group that bought the Kings, and they were running the operation in Kansas City. And he said, "G-Man, Dutch here, I want to play What If with you." And what if what? He said, "What if the Kansas City Kings were to move to Sacramento? Would you be interested in being the radio voice of the Sacramento Kings?" My jaw hits my desk, and I'm shaking my head, and I'm saying, "What?" And he said, "Well, would you be interested?" I said, "Well, of course I'd be interested." And so it evolved out of that. And a few weeks later, the then general manager of KFBK Radio, they were interested and wanted to acquire the rights. And he called me and he said, "Gary, day after tomorrow, I'm going to Kansas City. I'm going to meet some of the people in the Kings organization. They're playing a game that night. Would you like to go with me?" Well, of course. So we went and met the general manager, Joe Axelson. Bob Whitsitt was his associate general manager at that point. And keep in mind, in those days, the staffs for NBA franchises probably didn't have more than 25 people in the front office.
Right.
And now it's insane. There's 300 plus, in the Kings organization. But at any rate, we went there and we met those people. Kevin Harlan. I know you guys are big Kevin Harlan fans, as am I. But he was doing radio for the Kansas City Kings that season.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, he didn't want to, if the Kings in fact moved to Sacramento, he didn't want to relocate because he had things going that related to the NFL and stuff in Kansas City. And so that really is what opened the door, and that's why I got the call from Dutch Van Dusen.
Wild. One of the stories you've told me before was you had to record yourself almost like an audition tape.
Yeah.
Where you and your son Bobby went to the Oakland Coliseum at the time where the Warriors played, and you guys were in the stands and you recorded yourself calling the game while Bobby did stats.
Right.
And that was part of what you gave them to show you could actually do the job.
Yeah, that was a Joe Axelson thing. He wanted to, obviously he wanted to know what a possible future broadcaster would sound like and whether or not this kid had any knowledge of the game. And my knowledge was very limited of the NBA game. I wasn't really introduced and didn't follow as a kid the Detroit Pistons in my home state of Michigan. But when I came to California, I became a huge fan of Bill King, who called the Warriors games. And he was just sensational. But at any rate, yeah, they wanted us to tape the games. We started in L.A. at the old Forum, the Great Western Forum. And I took Bobby out of school. He was in high school at Kennedy High School, and you took him along to be my eyes and ears. We sat a couple of rows behind the legendary Chick Hearn in Los Angeles, and we're up in the thin air. I mean, the court is so far away. I say, how in the world do you call a game from this vantage point? But Chick liked that. He liked that vantage point, and he liked that. I think he called it the bird's eye view.
Ooh.
And at any rate, Bill Jones, who was the athletic trainer of the Kings at that time, handled all the travel and everything. And I was given his name and the contact information. Bobby and I went to L.A. We stayed at the Airport Marriott where the Kings stayed at that time. And I met Jonesy, and he said, be down in the lobby at such and such a time. We'll take the shuttle to the arena for the game. So we get on the shuttle with Reggie Theus and Eddie Johnson and Mark Olberding and Larry Drew and Mike Woodson and, the Kings. And they're looking like, who the hell is this?
Yeah.
And his son. And Jonesy introduced us and said, basically, these guys are cool. Treat them with respect.
Oof.
And they did. And they welcomed us. And so we went and did that game. Then we did the same in Oakland. And then I later found out that Joe Axelson, when he was driving cross country after the Kings officially were moved to Sacramento, he listened to those tapes. And I remember him telling me at one point, and I laugh at this because he said, kid, you were a hell of a lot better than you had a right to be. And I thought, if he only knew. Because I had not called basketball. Yeah. At that time, it had been like 15 years or something like that. So
I wish we had these tapes. Oh, my goodness. We don't, right?
Well, I probably do have some of them somewhere. I mean, I have an assortment of tapes over the years and highlights and different things that Deuce had put together at different times. I've got some of those.
Give me all these boxes. I want to digitize all of this and find it and hear you. I mean, it's crazy to think about, like, that is how you had to basically audition for the job and like where your brain was with basketball and everything else at that point of your career or where you were at in your life. But I guess now putting yourself in that seat, your first year in Sacramento, like, what do you remember about that time? The first year in doing Sacramento Kings basketball.
I just remember how the sense of anticipation was through the roof.
Okay.
And I've told the story many times about when the Kings were making one of those last late season Western swings, they came to Sacramento and had a practice at American River College. And in their gym, which seats no more than 3,200, I don't know if that's changed at all over the years, but the place is packed to the rafters. And the Kings come walking out of the locker room just to do their stretching and, getting loose and getting ready for an informal practice. And they're getting this thunderous standing ovation. And the energy, as I say, was just off the charts. And it was something, you just don't forget. And the players are looking at each other like, what in the world is this? Because, they were a lame duck in Kansas City, and they weren't drawing any kinds of crowds.
Yeah.
But to have that kind of a reception, to getting a standing ovation for just walking out there and then starting your stretching and so forth, they had no clue. But that was their first inkling of what life might be like in Sacramento.
Do you remember when you officially got offered the job and the emotions you felt?
I was, and I should point out that, they did go through the things that you have to go through in offering the job and making it available. It wasn't just like it was handed to
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And I was told later that there were over 100 who applied for that job, and many of them were, at that time, current NBA broadcasters who loved the idea of relocating to California. And so that made it even all the more remarkable. But as Dutch Van Dusen had pointed out early on, the philosophy was for Greg Lukenbill and Joe Benvenuti and all of those that were involved in the ownership group, they wanted a local identity, which made a ton of sense. And I was established in the community and had a sports identity, and they liked that. And they felt like I wouldn't be just trying to use that as a stepping stone to some other opportunity in the NBA or other professional sports leagues. And they were right in that respect. But in answer to your question, Deuce, I don't remember a lot in terms of the specifics about how I felt. I just thought, well, this is really cool, and this is a great opportunity. And it was intimidating as heck because, as I say, I didn't know the NBA game and the players and one thing or another as I should have. And so I was kind of being exposed to this much like fans in Northern California were being exposed to it for the first time.
When do you think you felt like, if you remember, like when you felt comfortable with the position and the role that you were in? Like, I am comfortable, I belong, this is me, I'm supposed to be here.
I don't know that there was any specific time where I felt that way. It was just like, as you got more accustomed to it and you got accustomed to the travel and the different arenas, and you're being introduced to different broadcasters, some of whom that, you hold on a very high pedestal, then, the realization slowly sinking in. But even then, not having any inkling whatsoever that it would end up being more than 40 years of the ability to have the opportunity to do the job. And that's when I look back and I marvel at that.
Yeah.
And I just, I don't have a mind that recalls specifics so often in terms of game situations. Somebody will mention something and I'll remember, oh yeah, that was such and such a night, or when, one thing led to another and somebody came up with a game-winning shot, or that was the night when we lost by 58, or whatever.
Never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a moment throughout your time calling Kings games that just sticks with you? I'm sure there are many, but is there anything that from a game or just a period of time that really just you think back and go, wow, what a moment?
There are a handful. Usually one of the first ones that comes to mind was the Mike Bibby game-winning shot in the playoff series against the Lakers.
Game 5.
Oh,
Yeah, and that was incredible. And there was still 7 or 8 seconds to go in the ball game. Put the Kings up by 1, but they still had to defend against Kobe and Shaq and company, and they got the win. That would be very, very high on the list. There, you love buzzer-beating shots. You remember Nemanja Bjelica made a shot in Houston
Yes.
with an inbound with 1 second to go.
Yeah, I remember that because post-game he said, F it, we deserve it.
That's right.
That was great.
And that's probably why I remember it so much. But he was so, and he said it in such a nonchalant fashion afterwards. But the fashion in which he hit that, close to a 30-footer, it was just catch shoot. I mean, it was no time to think or anything else. I think about a couple of the passes that De'Aaron Fox made to Harrison Barnes for game-winning shots in the home floor here at G1C. I think about the buzzer-beating shot that Tyreek Evans had from mid-court.
Of course.
Against Memphis, after Memphis had taken the lead with like 1.5 seconds to go and no timeouts, and the Kings just inbound, and Tyreek from mid-court launches and hits, and he runs over and jumps up on the media stand and table, and people are going nuts. Fat Lever was doing the analyst role in that game, and he was literally screaming, And I'm thinking, no, Fat, quiet.
You don't scream. You don't scream.
But-
This is audio.
And that's something, that he learned in his blossoming broadcast career. But, and then you look at, I mentioned losing by 58 or by losing by 62 to the Warriors at different times. Those things stand in your mind just as much.
Yeah, when I think about all the games you've called, and those moments, of course, stick out. I also think about some of the like challenging times that you had to navigate. And I'm not talking about wins or losses. I'm talking about this team could be going to Anaheim.
Yeah.
This team could be going to Seattle. And there was one game, it was a season where it seemed like maybe they could go to Anaheim. It was a Kings-Lakers game, and the Kings were rallying against Kobe and the Lakers, and you just were, it was such a good game. And you're like, I don't know if this is the last time.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I'm
I've heard this call.
high-fiving people
Yeah.
all over around me. And it felt, you just appreciated that moment so much, not knowing what was going to be next for the franchise. They ended up staying. But then the news came out that, hey, this group, the Maloofs, maybe or agreed to a deal with an investor group from Seattle. And that game after, your perspective was, we don't know what's going to happen, but for the time being, we're going to enjoy this ride together. And it was just, and I'm sure that wasn't an easy time for you. You're
Oh, not
so
at all.
invested. You don't want this team to move.
No.
But the way you handled it was just so professional. And I think for people who listened, it was like, it did put people at ease a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
You-
like
you-
I could breathe for a second.
You're like our leader in that moment. No, like truly, like you're rallying a community of people that are listening to you, that trust you and trust your opinion on that situation and that vibe. And to give those words, I mean, that's what this job is words, and words are very important. And like, you are so precise and on point with your words in those big, big moments. I mean, how do you do that all the time?
I have no idea.
You've had to do that several times.
And I appreciate you acknowledging that. I mean, those are poignant moments and moments that have deep meaning to me in terms of the difficulty of that time. You know, it was absolutely all but a done deal that they were going to go to Seattle. And before that, it was, as you mentioned, Anaheim, it was Vegas, it was Newport News, Virginia. There were so many possible places where the Kings franchise might end up going. And I to this day, I remember thinking it wasn't so much a selfish thought. It was, what a crying shame this will be for a young generation of blooming basketball and professional sports fans. You think about kids that got a chance to go to a game with their mom and dad, kids that went with grandma and grandpa or an aunt or an uncle or with a neighbor, that were exposed to sports at a young age. And the fact that this could be ripped away from them because there was no other sports franchise in the market at that time. And that's what created the pain. And then you think about the ticket takers and the ushers and the people who wouldn't have a job if the franchise was to move. And that was so, I mean, to me, it just ripped your insides out thinking about how that could happen. And I know that for everybody, those couple of months, it was so hard. And I'd talk to myself driving to the arena about find something to be positive about.
Wow.
Find something. Don't let your emotions or your disappointment influence and become part of the broadcast. The game is still the thing. And trying to find a way to make it entertaining, trying to find a way to make it exciting if it justifies being excited about. Be informative. Do the things that, you know, in my mind, a good broadcaster is supposed to do on a game-by-game basis.
All these things that you're saying, though, like your perfect delivery and magical in these moments of need for so many people that need to hear these things, or just like hear like why they should continue to feel and listen and stay connected. And it's like you were able to do that with your words, but you just, every time you were reflecting on it and I guess on like the fundamentals of it and like taking yourself out of it, finding the positive. It's not about sugarcoating things, but finding the positive. Who did you maybe learn from in those moments? Because like we get to say, hey, G-Man has taught us, you know, multiple things through our career. Who was someone that maybe like advised you to go in that direction or helped you with these type of things?
I don't think that there is anybody that I look at and say, okay, I learned this or this or this from.
Yeah.
I think it's just an overall experience. I mean, I was a big fan of various broadcasters, as we all are in their career. I was a big Dick Enberg fan. I enjoyed Bob Costas a lot. And fortunately, I got to work with both of those guys.
cool.
And
Wow.
the fact that they were supportive and encouraging, and maybe that contributes to it.
It does. It does.
But in terms of, one individual kind of paving the way or opening a door, I don't think that was the case.
you just understood it. You just had the feel. I don't know.
Well,
It's
and
just, you're just perfect in my eyes.
Oh,
Okay?
come on, man.
I'm like not kidding. Like there's something that just about like you are such a, and like I'm not trying to even gas you up right now, but like you're such a good person, but you're like such a good broadcaster too. And just to have both those things, and the fact that we have that here in Sacramento, it's just like. It just blows my mind.
Well, I'm the one that's blessed. I really am, and I love the fact that I get an opportunity to do what I do. It's hard when your team doesn't have success.
Yeah.
And that creates a challenge all unto its own. And when you look at a couple of years ago and you think, okay, this team turned a big corner and checked a lot of boxes, got the playoff drought out of the way, and we found that wasn't a mirage. There was actually a place in the desert where we could rejoice and take it all in and lap it up. And now to be in a situation where we are, nobody has seen that coming. Nobody wants that to happen. And we're all wondering, what's the future hold? I mean, that's always the ongoing question.
For sure.
And now we can't wait to see what transpires in terms of roster movement, one thing or another. And are we going to have to go through another year of pain in terms of the growing and one thing that leads to another? But you look at the positives, and there are always positives. And sometimes you have to look hard to find them.
Yeah.
But
say that.
you look at the opportunities that these young kids are getting, the rookies, the minutes, the reps, the experiences that they're getting. They're 2 or 3 years ahead of the norm in that respect. And that's invaluable. And that's a huge positive. And hopefully, we'll start building positives on positives, and we'll get to that. We all look back at those 8 years under Rick Adelman and the success of being in the playoffs 8 consecutive years and being on the threshold of getting to the NBA Finals, and the fact that we were so close to legitimately thinking about maybe there's a championship ring in our future. I still don't dismiss that. I still hold out hope. I have trust, and you have to have trust, and you have to have faith in the Scott Parrays and his staff and the administration, in Vivek, in people within the organization who make critical decisions. You have to believe that somehow they've learned from previous mistakes, and we all make mistakes. And that's one of the important things that I frequently tell, if young people ask, don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Yes.
Learn from it. Be better as a result of it. And that's why I maintain this degree of positive feeling and vibe about the organization, and the hope that we can not be the laughingstock of the league, that we have more credibility, and that we can build on that.
It's well said. Hope is a powerful thing. It really is. And you have to have it. And I think I echo what you say. It's when there's tough times, you could still find good moments during the tough times. Just like during winning times, you could find some things that aren't good either. And you have to look to, you have to be honest about it.
Winning glosses over a lot, a lot of scars, one thing or another.
When you reflect back on your time with the Kings, what are you most proud of?
Hard to pinpoint. I think I'm proud of the durability. I mean, 41 years with one team doesn't happen very often. And I'm again, I use that word blessed. I've been extraordinarily blessed to have the opportunity, but I'm proud of that. And I look at the whole experience, and I look at how much I've learned, how much I've grown, how much I continue to learn, and hopefully I continue to grow from the opportunities. And you look at your, your physical well-being, and you wonder, as we touched on a bit earlier, about how long does this last, and how do you handle it when it comes to an end for whatever reason. I guess there's just a number of things that kind of wander through my my thinking.
Sure.
In terms of trying to answer that question.
I mean, it's a long time. I mean, you've done it at a high level. It's cool. And I think back to, the milestones, all the games you've called. What's the number? Do you even know what the official number is at this point?
I think we're getting close. I have it in my folder.
I love that he keeps track of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I keep track of it.
In pencil? Do you erase it every time and then do that? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, see?
We're right around 3,300, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll never forget the time, what was it, 3 years ago, when after the game, the Kings, Mike Brown, gave you the
my goodness.
the chain to wear, honoring 3,000 at the time.
Yes, I was in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
What did that moment mean?
Oh man, that was very special to me. The fact that I didn't really know exactly what was happening. I had an inkling when one of the front office people suddenly appeared at my side. We had just started a post-game interview with Domantas Sabonis, and I'm up at my location. He's down on the floor, and I see Shannon Malone, who's the director of media relations, giving me the wind-up. Well, I hadn't barely asked the question, and then there's somebody standing next to me saying, "You need to get to the locker room right now." So then I'm thinking, okay, something unusual is happening. Well, just the fact that we won the ball game. And I love the fact that for the 1,000th, the 2,000th, and the 3,000th game that I broadcast of the Kings, they were all winning games.
Whoa.
Oh,
So
That's great.
that made
We
it
love
extraordinarily good. But then to go down there and to get the acknowledgement and the recognition and the reception from the players, I cherish. It's one of the all-time great moments of my life. And I know that Deuce Mason had something to do with setting that whole business up. I know that. And I can't tell you how much it means to me, and how many people acknowledged it and continue to acknowledge it over the years. And it was just it was a great special time.
it was. I mean, I remember the photos that came out, and I'm just like, this is amazing. And just, I mean, so deserved, as we all know. But I'm so glad you got that moment. When it's all said and done, what do you hope people remember about you?
I hope that I'm been recognized as a good person, and even though it's a bit of a cliche, I like the terminology of a pro's pro, which I use on different folks at different times, and I hope that people would acknowledge that, hey, G-Man was a pro's pro.
I think they do.
I was going to say, I was like, I can name like 7 more things about you.
G-Man, seriously, I have cherished the opportunity to, be working with you for so long now, and we've gotten to know you so well over the years, and it's so cool to see how you've done this at such a high level for so many years, and it's not stopping.
Yeah.
Like you just keep going. And that's another thing I admire is you love what you do. I think that's like a big thing. You're not
it's
just
huge.
doing this because like, I got to do this. It's like, you love what you do.
Can you imagine having a job where you didn't like going to work?
No, I can't. But my point is, like, there's some people, and there's no disrespect, some people would have been like, I've done this a long time. I could retire at 65. And you are doing this still. And it's so impressive. And not to compare you to like other people, but there's people your age that, maybe aren't doing as well or whatever, but you've like stayed so sharp, the way you prepare, you're
Taking care of
active, you
yourself.
golf,
Yep.
you take care. It's great. And I know life is not always easy, and for you to overcome so many obstacles, not
So
only
many
as
obstacles.
a child, but throughout your life, it's really impressive.
Well, again, I say thank you. I'm extraordinarily blessed, and I appreciate that. And but it's been a tremendous ride. I wouldn't change things. I'm not a believer in looking back and saying, oh, I wish I would have done this or I would have done that. Sure, there are nights when I go out of a broadcast and say, man, I sure screwed that up, or I wish I would have rephrased this a different way, or I wish I would have not stumbled over trying to figure out who had the ball in his hands and who made that shot.
Yeah.
And things that just go with, distant vantage points and age and one thing or another. But it's part of the journey. And the fact that I can continue that journey is extraordinarily special to me.
Well, you're very special to us personally, and I know to so many Kings fans so much. And the other thing I just want to say too, it's pretty cool to have like a true Sacramentan be like our broadcaster here for all the years. Like it's like you said, you never jumped ship. You never were looking at it as a stepping stone. Like you are through and through Sacramento. You've shared that in so many different ways. We've been inspired by you in so many different ways. So thank you. We love you.
Yeah, thank you. You are loved in return.
The one and only Gary Gerould.